points so narrow, you know, that it's about 6 feet wide in places, and as I say, it was really dramatic scenery. Up on the hillsides there were various regimental crests of British Army regiments that had been stationed along this very ancient and famous trading route that had seen all sorts of armies and actions, from Alexander the Great to the Mongol hordes to British armies and the Russian army, all sorts of armies. We went through this dramatic pass and down into this dust bowl of an area called Torkham, and from there Pakistan ended, there was no man's land, and Afghanistan began. I was wearing this very claustrophobic, all-enveloping blue burqa with the grill at the front, and with my two guides and the group that we were with, we were saying that we were part of a wedding party. We headed over to the Afghan border. As we crossed no man's land, I could see these really scary men with big beards and big turbans and their Kalashnikovs standing at the checkpoint, and I was beginning to wonder about the wisdom of what I was doing. But I was beyond the point of no return, so I couldn't turn around and run, which is what I wanted to do, but my feet were moving forward. But it was as John Simpson had said, I had become invisible. It was like wearing Harry Potter's invisible cape. I didn't even warrant a first glance, never mind a second glance. I was a cross on someone's travel document. We got through, jumped into a taxi and went to the nearest city, which turned out to be Jalalabad. And I was really interested to see, you know, this was going to be my first glimpse of life under the Taliban. George Bush and Tony Blair told us this was the most brutal, evil regime in the world, and they hated women. So imagine my joy and delight when I reached the marketplace in Jalalabad and saw that all the shopping was being done by the men. And I thought, well, this is quite liberating actually, isn't it? Of course, under the Taliban, women weren't allowed to talk to strange men. That would mean somebody who wasn't a husband, a father, a brother, a close male relative. So doing something as simple as buying a bag of sugar was nigh on impossible if you were a woman. So this is why the men were doing all the shopping. I still think it's a great idea, but perhaps needs finely tuning in places. My male guides got their provisions, and we headed off to a village where the Afghan guide had been born. When we arrived, there was much jubilation, not least of all because we were laden with food and various other goods. Afghanistan had been more than 2 decades in war and drought and famine, so anyone bearing gifts was made most welcome, until they said, "Who is the woman?" My Afghan guide said she's a Western journalist, and only that day Mullah Omar had made an edict that anyone helping a Westerner in Afghanistan during this time would be executed immediately as a spy, because he said it was a time of war, and this is what he'd said. So you can imagine how fearful the villagers were having me in their midst. But within half an hour, there's something wonderful about the Afghan people. Their hospitality is only outstripped by their curiosity, and very soon, half an hour, they began talking to me through the guide who acted as a translator. The first person who came to me was a girl who was in her early 20s, and I asked her how she felt about the impending war. And she said, I'm so frustrated. I was training to be a doctor, and the training school closed down and I was sent home. I should be qualified by now. I should be in a hospital, ready to save my people. Instead, I'm rotting away in this village. And I said, yes, I heard that the Taliban didn't want women to be educated. And her brother interjected and he said, no, that's not true. I was also training at the same medical facility when it was closed down. There was no money left and we were all sent home. And he too talked about his frustration of sitting in this village. And as I was talking to these two young people who were clearly very bright, very intelligent about how their hopes and dreams were being dashed, this larger-than-life Afghan lady walked in and she looked me up and down very slowly. Then she put her hands on her hips and her toes started tapping. An international language that there is trouble on the horizon. And she said, do you have any children? Again, it was all through the translator. And I said, yes, I have one. And she said, one. You English and American women, you are all so pathetic. All you can ever manage is one or maybe two. Me, I can have 15. And when you run out of your boy soldiers, I will be producing more. And I thought, wow, this is fighting talk, isn't it? And, so much for the silent, quiet, subjugated Afghan woman hiding under the burqa. And I said, but aren't you afraid of the Americans coming to attack your country? And she said, dare one American soldier come into my village and I will personally fight him off with my pots and pans. And I thought she probably would. And then she said, but we're very sorry about what happened to the American people. And then she kept referring to this little accident, this mishap. And I challenged the translator, saying, are you calling 9/11 a mishap? And he said, yes. And I said, you know, at that time we thought that 10,000 people had perished. And I said, this is a huge tragedy. And I suddenly realized that under the Taliban there was no television.